Now Worrell has a good cutback from him. He'll fire one, and that's going to go in! Now he'll fire one now from distance, and that is in! Creating some havoc. Just ball put in. Oh, look at this opportunity. That's missed. Oh, it's Stone!
I'm a husband. I'm a father.
I'm a sister.
I'm a son. I'm a brother.
I'm a daughter. I'm a sister.
I'm a referee.
I'm a referee.
I am a referee.
I'm a referee.
Granite City Food and Brewery has 2 Michigan locations in Troy and Northville. Serves made-from-scratch food, brews in-house beer, and even has brunch every Sunday from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. To learn more about their daily specials or to book a private party, visit gcfb.com. Make sure you head over to Granite City in Northville at the corner of 7 Mile and Haggerty, or the Troy location at 16 Mile and I-75.
Their first ball, their first uniform, their first number, their first teammate, their first goal, their first coach. We take great care in making sure their first isn't their last. We're so much more than a soccer class. Come play with us today at kickstarttoddlersoccer.com.
Our mission is to help players take their game to the next level and reach their potential. Not only do we help develop fundamental technical skills such as ball control in tight spaces with different surfaces, dribbling at speed and changing direction, using a variety of 1v1 skills to create space, receiving on a half turn, hook turn, and out of the air, finishing off the dribbling, one-touch, volleys, and headers. We help players get comfortable performing these skills at game speed with pressure and with both their dominant and non-dominant foot. In addition, we help players with their speed of play, awareness of space, defenders and teammates, and also dominate with our off-the-ball movement. We offer a variety of services such as one-on-ones, small groups, large groups, as well as team sessions. We have an experienced coaching staff that is professional, friendly, patient, while still holding players to high standards and holding them accountable. No matter what level you're at as a player, I'm confident we can help you get better. Over the past 3 years, we've built one of the best soccer-specific training facilities in the country and developed one of the most detail-oriented programs to help out players.
I watch soccer on the Michigan Soccer Network.
I watch soccer on Michigan Soccer Network.
لا تنسون تتابعونا على Michigan Soccer Network.
I watch soccer on Michigan Soccer Network.
I like to watch soccer on Michigan Soccer Network.
I watch soccer on Michigan Soccer Network.
Me gusta mirar fútbol en Michigan Soccer Network.
I watch soccer on Michigan Soccer Network.
I love watching soccer on the Michigan Soccer Network.
Back to Vitriol. He'll take a shot, and he'll bear it! And then he'll fire it from Billows, and it'll go in! Now Worrell has a good cutback from him. He'll fire one, and that's going to go in! Oh, and both goals so far. He'll fire one, and that's a wonderful save, Trinity. That's missed. Oh, it's Stone! In the... He'll fire one now from distance, and that is in! What a strike by Ben Maher! hello everybody, and welcome here to MSN Weekly, live from our MSN studios here in Shelby Township, Michigan. My name's Jonathan Turner, alongside Dan Stickrad here. Off to my right, he might be on your left of the screen, however you're looking, I guess, but he's to my right. It is Monday. It is the day Monday after Thanksgiving. I mean, Dan, I would say that I'm tired. I'm really tired.
A little bit of a turkey hangover, so to speak.
I think that's probably the best way to put it. As we always do our quick sound checks here, but yeah, first off, to all of you out there, hope you had a happy and safe Thanksgiving here this past Thursday. I stopped working on the network on Monday after our show. Only thing that I did do, Dan, was work on the stuff for the goal of the year stuff, which has been fantastic. We'll talk about that here tonight on the show. But Thanksgiving is one of my favorite holidays. It's the only holiday that really doesn't require you have to buy any gifts.
Sure.
Right?
Well, unless you're bringing the food over to
well,
someone's
yes,
house.
but again, that might be a little bit different. But my point though is from my perspective is that I don't have to buy gifts. I get to usually just sit back and enjoy the food, so to speak. And it's exciting. It's an exciting day for me. There's football.
And there was more football. Two kinds of football.
Yeah, there was American football, right? And then there was, the European football, right? But man, what a great holiday it was. Enjoyed. I had two Thanksgivings this weekend. I had one on Thursday, one on Sunday. So I had a chance to enjoy two Thanksgivings. So, but excited here nonetheless to get back at this here on MSN Weekly. But this broadcast is brought to you by Kickstart Toddler Soccer. Our mission is to stimulate the bodies and minds of children while introducing them to the joys of goal-oriented physical activity leading up to competitive play. Taking great care with the knowledge that for many, this may be their first group class, we will focus on building nurturing relationships while introducing an engaging curriculum with the objective of making Kickstart class or game the highlight of every student's week. Kickstart Toddler has locations in Macomb, Oakland, Genesee, and Washtenaw County. To learn more, visit kickstarttoddlersoccer.com. So, Dan, Thanksgiving this past weekend, a lot of soccer happening. The World Cup is going on, and maybe people at home might be going, "Hey, why haven't we, talked a lot or covered a lot of the World Cup on the Michigan Soccer Network?" And I do want to address that a little bit. One is our goal here with MSN, Dan, is to cover local soccer. Now, I'm not saying that the World Cup is not something that we should be covering. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's just our goal has always been to cover the local game, the professional, the international game around the United States and around the world, for that matter, is covered heavily. The things that don't get covered are the local high school, youth, college-type teams, and that's where our focus has been. And we just didn't have the personnel at the time to really kind of put together anything specific to the World Cup.
Yeah, and there's not really anyone locally that's playing in the World Cup. I mean, other than Christian Pulisic grew up in Plymouth Canton area and moved to Pennsylvania in, 9th grade? So there really isn't anyone that's connected, so to speak, to the Michigan soccer community.
No, and it's one of those things where even though they're not connected, we're soccer, right? We're a soccer network, and I think it's important to say for us, as long as we continue to be a soccer network, then the future World Cup here is going to be held here in 4 years. Here in not Michigan, but here in the United States and Canada and Mexico, we'll get into those. We'll get into those matchups and more in depth. We'll talk about the World Cup here today a little bit, but our focus is, as I said before, has not been on major international sports, international soccer and domestic. We don't talk about the MLS really on this show at all. We cover the leagues that will take place here in Michigan. NISA, USL 2, USL Championships, UPSL, UWS 1 and 2, MPSL, NPSL. There are a lot of leagues. Then you start getting into the youth leagues and MLS Next, ECNL, Directors Academy, all these different leagues we can get into. I didn't even mention high school in there yet, and I didn't mention any of the colleges that are happening. And a couple of colleges played here, one specific here this past Saturday, Western Michigan. We talked about them last week on the show. They made it to the Sweet 16. They fell to Portland here this past Saturday, 1-0, and bowed out of the the tournament. Their furthest run, I think, ever.
Yeah, I believe they got to the Sweet 16 one other time,
Yeah,
5 years ago. But this match is their deepest run. And this was probably their best team. But I believe it's their best team goals against average in the country this year. They gave up single digits of goals all season.
Yeah, and they are a very good team. They're bringing back some really good players, right? And Tanner and Carson Hodgsons, who had a phenomenal season. I think they were at one point, again, freshman players of the year. I mean, it's at least during the course of the season, their names were mentioned a number of times for a weekly opportunity for awards. So, but those are players and teams that we can talk about. Ferris State plays their semifinal matchup here on Thursday, the 2nd. Or first, I think
it's the first.
First, yeah, Thursday the 1st, with a chance to play in a national final here on I think Saturday.
Yeah, and someone not named Grand Valley State is in the final
I
four.
know it's crazy to think about, but that's what's. So we'll talk about a number of things here tonight. What I want to get into first, Dan, is this goal of the year thing. It has been really, really cool. I think the response, for the most part, from the high school community has been pretty impressive. We tipped over 113,000 total votes yesterday. The last time I looked today, so far, close to 5,000 total votes. So we'll be around 117,000 by the time the night's over with, if not more.
Bad for a first year of doing this.
No. I mean, because I think the reality would be as well, okay, we in that same time period, we've had 14,500 new people come to our website that's never been there before. So that in itself, too, also an impressive number for us. But someone had to hit that button 112,000 times. So it's really cool. And, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty part of this. We're getting to the business end of this contest. We're looking at right now, we're at the end of round 2. There's the final 2 matchups, one today and then one tomorrow. And then we go into the quarterfinals where all we have left are 8 players and those goals. I'll tell you this right now, it's pretty cool. And if you haven't had a chance to, head over to MichiganSoccer.com, MichiganSoccerNetwork.com. Right on the homepage, it says Vote Now. It'll take you to all the information. One thing that I don't want to do, we're busy on the screen here, and as we start to get more producers to help out, we'll start to add more graphics in. But I feel like right now, the way we're doing this is the right way to go. But this goal of the year thing, and then now there's the save of the year, which is coming out here on December the 12th. And if you want to know what that's all about, that's about talking and looking at the best saves we saw this high school season. And it was easy for us to go find the goals because usually on the scoreboard it goes 1 is 2, when a goal was scored based on where the counting was on the clock. You really can't do that when it comes to goalkeeper saves. You have to go back, really watch a good chunk of a game to see what, to see who and what. We've already selected right now based off of what I've done. I found 10 saves out of the 16. So I have 6 more I have to find. But we're into it right now. But either way, exciting time to be Save of the Year. Number of good players were selected for that. We'll release the full list here sometime between now and the end of next week of players and the brackets. We'll have that all ready to go and have the website updated and ready to go for a whole nother daily dose of me having to go in there and click numbers and update screens. I'm getting a lot of work in at editing websites with graphics and voting numbers, making sure I put the voting numbers in the right spots.
You don't want to make that mistake again.
No, the worst. You thought you would thought that I had shot someone. That's kind of how it went down. But the whole point of MSN Weekly, Dan, is for us to talk about what's happening at MSN, talk about what's happening within Michigan soccer as far as what's going on across this great state, we can't not talk about the World Cup. Like, we can't. I mean,
because anyone that's a true soccer fan has been finding time to watch it.
Correct.
Everyone across the state. I mean, I've already run into a few people at some restaurants, and that's the main conversation. The World Cup.
Well, it is, and it's one of those things where for me at least, I don't know how hyped I got for this World Cup. You know what I mean? Like, you would think that after, missing the World Cup back in 2018, that I would be like craving international, but I'm not. It's weird.
Maybe that has something to do with the timing of it, because we're used to having the World Cup in June and July.
Yeah.
But now here it is in November, and then flood into the beginning of December. There's so much going on in the world of sports. I mean, if you're a sports fan, you're watching football. You got college football, men's and women's basketball, college basketball started. You got high school girls and boys basketball getting ready to start. Wrestling, hockey at the pro, collegiate, and high school level. I mean, there's so much going on. So it's kind of competing with a lot of stuff that Americans traditionally already watch at this time of year. So we'll see. But again, most people I've talked to are following it. Even people that aren't really soccer fans, I've heard them talk about it in the last couple of weeks.
Well, I mean, the largest audience in history of international men's soccer took place on, the matchup on Friday at 2:00 between the U.S. and England. I got a 15 million, almost 16 million people. I still feel like that just seems low to me. You think about 16 million households per se. I don't know if that accounts in if you're watching on your phone or or I don't know how that works in today's world.
Is that just in the U.S. or
that was just in the U.S.
Okay, so not counting for
that's not counting yet. Nope, not counting anywhere else. But you think about that though, when you go, okay, well, 16 million. I mean, I was looking at this earlier today, and I'll look at it right now. The Super Bowl. What was Super Bowl? What was last year's Super Bowl? What number was it? You know what it was?
60? I don't know. It seems like it.
60, fair. The Super Bowl 60 views. We'll just see. I don't think we're okay. So 2022, they had 38.45 million views. 30.45 million views. We're less than half of that. That's the U.S. views, by the way. That's sorry. I'm trying to see what they say here for. That Spanish is 1.9, and then I think 29.5 is us. So 29.5 million viewers watching the Super Bowl, 26.5 in 21, 29.9 in 2020. So I don't know. I still feel like that's not enough. I still feel like 16 million just seems low
for a marquee matchup against England.
Yeah, I mean, with all the excitement that supposedly is happening. Now, granted, it's at 2:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah, I'm sure that has something to do with it because even though it was a holiday weekend, some people still had to work.
Correct. So okay. It's 2:00 in the afternoon. 16 million people watching this. Okay, I was one of the 16 million. You were. Granted, keep in mind too that a lot of people went to watch parties, so those TVs aren't only getting counted for whatever TVs are on that bar. So if there's 300 people at a bar, they're not at their home watching the game. You're missing out. So maybe the views, but again, I think about that. Okay, Super Bowl. Don't people have to go to parties too? So it's kind of the same thought process.
True.
So you would think then that more than if 30 million people are watching it on their TVs, there's probably more like a neighborhood of maybe, let's say, a quarter of that. So let's say it's 45 million.
How many
15 million people aren't accounted for.
How many people go to a bar and restaurant and watch?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, just unaccounted for or whatever. But anyways, it's 8:13 here on Monday evening. You're watching MSN Weekly. We're going to dive into some topics here tonight that I think are really cool. We're going to talk here about Fran Murphy Law, and that's all you, Dan, this time. So
puts me on the spot. So since two cases are never the same at Fran Murphy Law, we provide personalized solutions to your legal problems. We have years of experience with complex civil, criminal, and personal injury cases and are privileged to serve clients across southeastern Michigan. Call or text us now at 248-763-4111.
That's right, Fran Murphy Law. Don't go nowhere. We come back. We're going to talk about soccer parents. Talk about does USA versus Random Mar, what's that look like, so much more. MSN Weekly live right now from our MSN studios in Shelby Township, Michigan, right here on the Michigan Soccer Network. Now Worrell has a good cutback from him. He'll fire one, and that's going to go in! Now he'll fire one now from distance, and that is in! Creating some havoc. This ball put in. Oh, look at this opportunity. That's missed. Oh, it's Stone!
Granite City Food and Brewery has 2 Michigan locations in Troy and Northville. Serves made-from-scratch food, brews in-house beer, and even has brunch every Sunday from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. To learn more about their daily specials or to book a private party, visit gcfb.com. Make sure you head over to Granite City in Northville at the corner of 7 Mile and Haggerty, or the Troy location at 16 Mile and I-75.
Welcome back here once again here into our MSN studios in Shelby Township, Michigan. Dan Stickrat, John Turner. We're MSN Weekly here on this Monday night, and Steve Besk is not here tonight. Steve Besk is out house shopping. He's getting engaged.
Somebody's getting married.
He's getting engaged. He gets engaged and goes out and starts to look for a house. So exciting times. We spent some time here this morning, Dan, Steve, and I did, talking about upcoming schedules and our lineup here for 2023. A very, very good day for us to cover a lot of the content. And that's why it's really, really important for you right now, if you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button. It's usually right, by the video. But hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. That way you're notified every time we go live or add new content. It's important that you do that. Again, one thing I'll tell you is that we are putting a lot of time and effort into really providing, you, our viewer, our audience, people that watch our live soccer games, an opportunity to really have quality broadcasts. And as we start to do these journeys and these new shows coming out here in January, it's really important that you're part of that process, so you know we're doing it. Other part of that too is we are right now on our Twitter at MI Soccer Network on Twitter. We are holding a poll right now. We want to do a contest here in January, and we want to raffle every Friday gift cards. And have fun with that. So how do we do that, you say? Make sure my mute wasn't off. But how do we do that? We're gonna if you subscribe, we'll go through that each week on Fridays. We'll pull that list of subscribers, and then we'll go ahead and draw a raffle for any of the items that we're going to put in that mix. Our goal is to raffle up between 5 and 10 people a week in regards to subscribership. So now I'm not saying you should wait. But if you did wait, that might make sense at this point. But either way, what the plan is Chipotle gift cards or Qdoba or your tropical smoothie, right? Speaking of tropical smoothie, there's one right here. It's fantastic. Always good stuff.
I think they're far beyond fantastic.
But yeah, so it's one of those things where, we want to help grow the network. In order to do that, we want to incentivize you by offering you free stuff. So, so stay tuned in December. We're going to launch that for an opportunity for any one of you to win gift cards to places. So go to our Twitter feed right now on MI Soccer Network. Hit the poll. What do you want to see as far as gift cards? We'll put out some more polls here between now and the end of the week here. But our goal is to grow this. As Danny Garrett now. What up, Danny Garrett? He's joining us here once again. Something we want to talk about. We're going to dive into this here. Is let's talk a little bit USA Iran here tomorrow. I have been impressed with Team USA for the. I would say at this point, I think they played a good 70 minutes on Friday. A good 45 minutes today. So 135 minutes or something like that, whatever it might be. So if they can find a way tomorrow to put a full 90 together, they win that game.
I agree. And their defense has been solid.
Yeah, I mean, you got to put together a full 90 if you can do that tomorrow. And again, I mean, Zimmerman has been very, very shaky. I think that Zimmerman is kind of shell-shocked from giving away a PK like he did in that matchup, against Wales. That right now is the difference maker in this tournament, because if they win that game against Wales, we're in. We're already in. And now we do control our own destiny. Steve and I was talking about if you could picture any type of an outcome where U.S. would be after 2 games, and that would be where they are now, which is they control their own destiny. If they win tomorrow, they're in. If Iran wins tomorrow, they're in, right? And the next question I have is, did people believe that the United States had a chance to even get out of this group in the first place?
Yeah, some people said yes, some people said no. I mean, so much of the focus was on England. They're ranked top 10 in the world.
Yeah.
It's England, so.
Well, and Danny Garrett's like, as long as they are, I'm excited for 2026. I mean, I think that the youthfulness. So here's the thing that really helps a quality side become great, and that is to have experience, right? And that's the one thing. If you were to start talking about like looking at the high school level or college level, teams that have senior-heavy rosters tend to be the ones that tend to win and go all the way.
You see them in the Final Four.
Always. So, and I don't remember, there's a quote, I think, once upon a time where someone was like, I'd like to have, maybe you even might have mentioned it, I think it might have been you, but you were like, someone said that they'd like to have 11 seniors and 9 really good juniors ready to go for the next season on their roster. That's what they'd have, right? Because 11 seniors on your field, they're all fighting. They know they don't have another day. That's the one thing the United States is missing right now is experience. They're missing a lot of experience at this level.
Aren't they like the second youngest team in the World Cup this year?
They are. I think in the history of the World Cup, too, I think they're pretty much up there as well as far as the youngest in history. They're pretty darn close if they're not there. But again, experience as far as like for example, having a token player, that could go out there and lead, with their experience would help. I think tomorrow, or Jordan Morris is not a token player, right? He's not token experienced international cap player. It's like if you had a Clint Dempsey still on your roster, that's who I'm talking about.
Yeah, some of the veterans been around for a long time.
Yeah, a veteran. You bring them out. You sprinkle them out there as like a token of good fortune. And they're the ones who are on the bench and in training sessions leading these young men and this inexperienced roster towards more, And Danny Garrett says, U.S. is the second youngest roster in the entire World Cup. Should have beat Wales and frustrated England. This is great stuff. And it is great stuff. I mean, again, they missed it in 20, and they missed the World Cup in 18, right? In 2010, they made their way to the furthest they'd ever gone, right? They went all the way to not the furthest they've ever gone, but the furthest they've gone in a very, very long time, I think since the 1950s. Some crazy number. They ended up going to the semifinals in that World Cup. But not been there.
How many nations were actually in the World Cup back in 1950?
I don't know. Not many. I know that there was an England battle that we won. Movie about it. Gerard Butler's in that movie. He played the goalkeeper. Well, I thought that was called
1-0, right? I mean, that's
they went 1-0
years ago.
Not expected to win that game, but again, I mean, and that's why they even say that England's never actually beat the U.S. in a World Cup. They played 3 times, 2 draws, and 1 loss.
Right.
So, sometimes those things can weigh heavy on a player if they have experience. And to be fair, it's like, look at Brazil. Brazil, who is ranked number 1 in the world, to be fair, odds-on favorite to win the World Cup, if not the number 1 team to win the World Cup based on everybody. There's some Argentina's in there, and you've got some other teams that maybe have a chance. England's been in that conversation. But the amount of pressure that Brazil has every single World Cup has got to be immense, because they don't go into the World Cup going, well, we should, let's kind of shake it up, see what could happen here. No, they're expected to win. They are expected to win the World Cup every time they go in every year, and they have been nothing short of terrible in the last 4 World Cups, 3 World Cups.
Yeah, they haven't.
Yeah, it's been terrible. And now here they are. They're in the World Cup. They just beat today. They beat the Swiss 1-0. By the way, fantastic goal that was scored, half volley. That was spectacular. I was watching that here. Actually, we were watching it at Art and Jake's. Nice little thing there across the street there. Nice little shout out to them. If you want to sponsor us, we'd love to have you. But we go there quite often after our meal, after our shows here. But either way, we were watching that game and just talking about that pressure and talking about how, as a player, the expectation to go in and win a World Cup. I don't know, is the U.S. ever going to be there? Is it ever going to be a thing where we're expecting you to be, how many people, I would love to know how many people were like, yeah, the USA is going to win this thing.
I've never heard.
It's like saying the Lions are going to win the Super Bowl. Granted, I think it's a lot easier for the Lions to win a Super Bowl than it is for the United States to win a World Cup. Now, that might be arguably one of the most controversial things I've ever said, because the Lions have been terrible forever. And it's not in the same ballpark. But I still think it's much easier for the NFL Lions to win a Super Bowl than for the United States to win a World Cup.
They are trending in the right direction. So are the Red Wings. The U.S. soccer is rebounding after not making it 4 years ago. But, at the end of the day, the one main disappointing thing with the U.S. so far, and they can rectify that with some goals next year, is that scoring. Less than 5 shots on frame in 2 games?
And again, let's even we say on frame. Christian Pulisic put one off the woodwork.
Right.
And to be fair, I don't know if anyone expected that shot to be fired the way that it was. That does not count as a shot on frame, unfortunately. So, but either way, that's an example of one of the shots that's been taken. You can't win games if you don't score goals. And to be fair, throughout this tournament, I think that's a big common theme in this tournament right now. Scoring goals is not happening in buckets. Obviously England went off on a rail against Iran. They scored 6 goals. I think we saw another one that's got 7 goals in a game.
Yeah, the very first week.
Yeah,
someone
you got, but aside from that, nobody else is lighting it up. It's been a really good tournament of really good defensive play. I've been really impressed. The things that impressed me about the United States, aside from them being youthful and their opportunity for them to get the experience to get them to a much further World Cup here in 4 years, is their build-up. Their build-up play has been really, really good. The USA team knocking a ball 50 yards over the back of the line and having a Landon Donovan or a Clint Dempsey or anyone like that running up to try to run onto it has been the theme or been the tactic that the United States has been using since the 1920s. They're not using that style of play. That type of play. We saw it 8 years ago. We saw that kind of play. We saw that 10 years ago. We've been seeing this type of style of play from the United States for many, many years. And their buildup has been tremendous. And their patience and their their patience on the attack, where you're seeing them out wide, knocking the ball around, and Tyler Adams has been, he's been fantastic. He is.
But they're generating chances. Like corner kicks, throw-ins, not too far from the box. They are getting chances where they're putting the ball in that final third of the field. They just have a hard time connecting on getting a shot. Making the goalkeeper have to make a play.
Yeah.
And that could change tomorrow. Iran has proven to be vulnerable in the defensive end. They yielded 6 goals to England the first week of the World Cup. So
yeah,
we'll see how that pans out tomorrow.
We will definitely see how it pans out tomorrow. As we now we'll talk about Granite City here. Granite City Food and Brewery has 2 Michigan locations in Northville and Troy, Michigan, that serves made from scratch food. Has brews, in-house beer, and even has brunch every Sunday from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. To learn more about their daily specials, visit gcfb.com or head over to Granite City in Northville at the corner of 7 Mile and Haggerty, and the Troy location at 16 Mile and I-75. Let them know the Michigan Soccer Network, sent you as you get your food and whatnot. So
good stuff. Been to the Troy location.
We have
6-7 times.
We were just there here 3 weeks ago for the Dream Team reveal. So that was fun. Something we have not talked about yet on this broadcast, we talked about it a little bit last broadcast, is about this upcoming super team. And Dan, why don't we explain to our audience, our viewers, what a super team is here for MSN?
Yeah, so we went through the all-state teams, and we tried to pick around 25 players. We tried to stick with mostly seniors. There were 3 or 4 juniors that were either first team or even on the dream team. Left a few juniors, very talented juniors, off because I know a lot of those kids are going to get their praise next year. So we just tried to go through, and it was not necessarily completely a season award, but some of it was a career award for some of these kids. There was a couple players on the list that were all-state 4 years in a row that necessarily weren't on the dream team, but just wanted to highlight some of the players that contributed, to their high school for 1, 2, 3, even 4 years that had great careers. And some of these kids are getting recruited, some aren't, but it's a very special list. I think we'll have fun unveiling that next week.
That we will. That's next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern right here on the Michigan Soccer Network. It'll be in place of our normal MSN Weekly. Well, we'll do that, and we'll have a lot of coverage of that here next week. But don't go anywhere. When we come back here from commercial, we'll get into soccer parents, and it's a topic that I know all too well. We'll be back here on the other side of the break.
In life, things aren't scripted.
If you're an athlete, we need people like you and translate those skills to officiating.
You can get a lot out of it.
It happens in every town, in every game.
We never have a perfect game, but the rewards always outweigh the negativities.
I'm a husband. I'm a father.
I'm a sister.
I'm a son. I'm a brother.
I'm a daughter. I'm a sister. I'm a referee.
I'm a referee.
I am a referee.
I'm a referee.
Soccer on the Michigan Soccer Network.
I watch soccer on Michigan Soccer Network.
لا تنسون تتابعونا على Michigan Soccer Network.
I watch soccer on Michigan Soccer Network.
I like to watch soccer on Michigan Soccer Network.
I watch soccer on Michigan Soccer Network.
Me gusta mirar fútbol en Michigan Soccer Network.
I watch soccer on Michigan Soccer Network.
I love watching soccer on the Michigan Soccer Network. Welcome back here once again into our MSN studios here in Shelby Township, Michigan. And it's MSN Weekly, Dan Stickrett, John Turner. And we talked about a lot of things here tonight. We talked about USA versus Iran tomorrow, what our thoughts are about how that's going to go work out here for the United States here tomorrow. A chance to win tomorrow to go in the knockout
stage and knockout rounds. Be one of the 16 remaining teams in the World Cup tomorrow. That game's at 2 p.m. Eastern on Fox. Something that I think we talked a little bit about this. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe during our pre kind of like show talk, we talked about Dan, about how all the games for the United States are playing their games at 2:00. Now I don't know. I haven't looked at any other teams and what their schedule's been like. But are there any other teams that haven't had the same 3 games all at the same time?
I didn't go through all the results and game times, but maybe. It seems kind of weird that they drew the same time slot.
I know. Same time slot conveniently at 2:00 Eastern every single game. That's a really cool thing. I guess kudos to the United States for getting there. We want to talk about here's what we want to talk about. We want to talk about parents, soccer parents. We've all been around. I mean, I don't consider myself a soccer parent because my kids don't play soccer, so this is not. I do not fall into this at all. Before we dive into this, though, if you want to become a sponsor here or advertise your business, your products or services on this network, all you have to do is head over to MichiganSoccerNetwork.com, and you can click on the Advertise tab. We'll walk you through the whole process. If you just want to pick the phone and call me, you're more than welcome to do that, 248-416-3626. Operators are standing by. But Danny Garrett got a comment in. Credit to many of our best playing in Europe, I think, is what his announcement was in regards to controlling play and how they look, right now at the World Cup. But let's talk about soccer parents. I had a chance here just a couple weeks ago. I made a mistake. All right, I made a mistake, and during the process of goal of the year, I put the wrong number next to the wrong name. Now, everything else about the announcement was correct. Everything about it was correct. The name, the graphics, everything that we did was correct, except for the part where at the end of the night, at 11:45 p.m., I go up to the website, I put the final numbers in for the day, and then hit publish. I put them next to the wrong name. And it was as if I had shot, something out of a cannon and hurt a lot of people. That's kind of how the reaction was. And it got me thinking about, like, where we are right now. And, Dan, me and you've been around soccer in this area for 30-plus years.
I started playing youth soccer in the late 70s. I was like 6 years old.
So 30-plus years you've been playing, right? And so we talk about the different types of parents. Parents that really care. Like, we'll go to games and people walk up and say, "Oh my God, you guys are fantastic. Love what you're doing. We love what you're doing. I watch all your games. The people in the press box have been phenomenal, right? But then, people just kind of like inject themselves into our press box to tell us that we're saying their child's name wrong. Like, literally. Now, I don't know if I've ever in my entire lifetime have ever even thought that I would need to go into somebody else's press box and insert my feelings about my son or daughter's, their names and how they're pronounced. I get it, right? It's personal. I understand it. You gave your child the name and you want it to be spelled and said correctly. We get that. The last thing that I want to do as a broadcaster is get the kid's name wrong. We don't want to do that. There's a right way and a wrong way to do things, right? There's a right way and a wrong way to do things. I'll give you a perfect example. This is not a soccer parent. This was just someone that I dealt with on Friday. Every year, Dan, we go to the Festival of Lights parade in Howell. My aunt and uncle, they live in Howell. And the day after Thanksgiving, every year, except for COVID year, we've gone there. We've gone for 12 consecutive years, except for COVID. Make sure I clarify that, except for COVID. And we set up, we get there early. My aunt sets up chairs on the corner and where we're going to put our chairs. And we for 11 years, we were right at the same spot. And this year, some work didn't work out where we didn't get our normal spot. We get to our chairs. We had to walk a half mile, maybe 3/4 of a mile to get to the park, get to our chairs.
This is really close to downtown Howell.
It's right in downtown Howell, right on Grand River. Very beautiful town. If you have not been to Howell, I would encourage you to do so. There's a cool store called the Heart of Michigan. It's got a Michigan-made product. Really cool little town. So we get there. My kids, like they do every year, my wife, my aunt, my kids, they all go off to the stores and they start looking around for Christmas stuff and start shopping, buy bakery goods, whatever the case might be. So that all takes place. I'm going to get ready to sit down. And I don't know, out of the corner of my eye, some lady just comes in and sits down in one of our 5 chairs that are set up in a line. And I looked at her and I was like, excuse me, those, and she's like, well, I just need a break. You're not using them anyways. Let me take a break. And I was like, well, but these aren't my chairs. I'm like, these aren't even my chairs. These are my aunt's chairs. And she's like, when you go to sit down, I will get up. And this time, every ounce of my being, I wanted to yell at her. I'm thinking, things are starting to go off in my brain, Dan.
It's hard to contain it. I know I had a similar incident at a store. I don't want to talk about it on the air, but
again, the reason why I say this is like, wait a second, but this is exactly what I'm talking about. Because even though that person has nothing to do with soccer, to walk up and have what I would say, the balls to just sit in somebody else's chair and do that, come on. Come on. And again, the reason why I say this, and this is where I bring this up, is that, okay, that was not a soccer parent, probably has a grandchild that plays soccer, so that's why they were like that. But so then we go into I had resigned from Birmingham Groves High School soccer back in 19. My last season there was in 2019, Dan. And in the COVID year, they were still playing. In the fall of 2020, they were playing. Masks and all that kind of stuff. And I remember, I think I was talking with my boss, athletic director over at the school, and he was like, hey, you should stop by, and see the team. And so my son and I, we went and watched a game over at Groves. And, obviously there were a number of kids that I coached from the previous year who were still playing on varsity, some new kids. And sure enough, a parent walks up to me and says, hey, hey, John, how you doing? And then another, hey, John, hey, just kind of like catching up kind of thing. And another parent comes over, and this is just after their son had scored a goal. Now, mind you, they were playing a team that they were far better than the other team, and they were up at this point, I think, 5-0. So it wasn't really a good game. This parent walks up to me and says, see what good coaching does to my son, right in front of my son. And I'm just like, excuse me, like what? I'm sorry, what? He's like, yeah, see how if you had coached my son a certain way, see what happened, like
they're blaming you because they couldn't score a goal the previous year.
Like that was the comment that came to me. Now, it's one thing to to feel like maybe you didn't do a good job, or maybe feel like you could have done a better job, right? Now, there were certain athletes, and I'll tell you this to you, Dan, there were certain athletes that had a lot of talent that I coached, a ton of talent. They just couldn't, and this is a great comment because someone was talking about this at the banquet here last week at the All-State banquet, is a soccer player has to be not only a fit player, they have to be a smart player. It's one thing to have talent. It's a whole other thing to be able to find a way to utilize that talent that gives you the opportunity to get a ball and go score a goal. Period. And there are a lot of players out there that are really good players, but they can't find a way to connect the dots. And this player specifically is one of those players. They just couldn't connect the dots. And we tried. We tried walking them. We tried crawling, so to speak, giving you kind of like the crawling, walking before you can run kind of thing. We tried showing them video. We did all these things, and this player just never got it. And the reason why is because, like a lot of kids at this level, at club soccer levels and things like that, players who are fast and strong are taught to run north and south. We get the ball, we go along.
Yeah, play direct.
Right? Go long. And this player was really good at a ball, over the top, boom, right? And the problem, though, is at the varsity level, you can't not be successful with that playing in an OAA white, an OAA red. Good luck. Ain't going to happen.
No.
You have to be dynamic. You have to be a very dynamic player. And this player was not that way. And, throughout the course of his career while I was there, the parents were very much involved in the soccer part of that relationship. And they had their opinions, and that's fine. But to do what they did to me in front of my son was, was jaw-dropping. And, I could have, in that moment, gone, for a below-the-kneecap hit, so to speak, back. It didn't make sense. I just said, okay, well, great. I'm glad he's getting good coaching. I mean, good for him. It's great that he found his way and he's having success. And to be fair, not all coaches are able to coach players the way that we want to coach them, right? Sometimes you need another voice. It could be an assistant coach, it could be a trainer, it could be another player that gets the other player to snap out of it, so to speak, and to get to where we want them to go, or where they want to go. But Dan, when I start talking about soccer parents, and Steve and I are working on a project right now that we'll be announcing here in the coming weeks and months in regards to this conversation in a different way, is that the problem with parents is that it involves their children.
Yeah, they have a hard time.
That's the problem.
Hard time with it.
I mean, my kids are in school. We've homeschooled up until this year. We had homeschooled our kids forever. My daughter Brandon had gone to kindergarten, and that was it. Homeschooling is what we did for them. It was not something that we did it based on foundation and fundamentals and things like that. And over the last number of years, just because of my schedule, my wife's schedule, we opted to put them into school, and the kids are flourishing. They're having a great time. But every time they come home, somebody stole my daughter's cell phone from school. We just dealt with it. It cost me $400 to replace. When that happens, what do you want to do? You want to go and yell from the rafters about why the school couldn't help my daughter keep her phone. Like, I get it. When I would always have my parent meetings at the beginning of the year with our parents, I would say one of the first things that would come out of my mouth is, okay, I understand, my moms and dads, you want the 10 best players on the team and your son on the field. That's what you want. You don't want your son to be in the 13. You want your son to be in the 11.
Yeah, you coach, so, and I've heard this story so many times over the years where you keep a group of kids that maybe play JV as juniors, or they were on your bench as juniors, but you keep them as seniors because they're program kids. They're good kids. They don't cause any problems. They work hard. They just want to be part of something.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, a lot of times that the message is like, you're on the team, but you're in the bottom 5 on a 23-man roster, and the kids are happy with that. The parents obviously aren't. And all of a sudden you get called into the principal's office or AD's office before practice one day, and dad's a lawyer, mom's a doctor, and my kid plays for club team X, and they were told how great they were for the last 9 years. Why is my son number 18 on a 23-man roster? This is unacceptable. And they want to lynch the coach. This happens in more than just soccer. This happens in basketball, volleyball, everything.
Yeah, we're not.
I have been privy to so many stories over the last 3 decades from coaches that have told me that some of them have walked away from coaching because they just couldn't deal with people like this.
So the reason why I think it's important that we talk about this, and we are going to have a lot more conversations about this, because if the game is going to change, we as parents, it starts with us. It starts with how we handle things in our home. By the time it happens out in the world, it's too late. There's nothing we can do about it. It's too late. I mean, so the goal is to, affect change in your home. Because again, once you leave the home, it's too late. Dan, like the reason that I did the things that I did was to find a way to curb the parental involvement that would create conflict. We knew that we were never going to reduce it to a 0, right? I knew that was never going to be the case. But the goal was to find a way to mitigate it as much as I possibly could. And that's why I created, parent handbooks, all the decisions that we were going to make, the rules and things like that to kind of help kind of facilitate and create this, hopefully kind of create like this one lane where, okay, so I can at least see it coming. But it was awful. Like, the reason I resigned was because of parents. It wasn't because of the kids. I mean, I miss the kids. I mean, I miss the training sessions and the things. But I remember that I went to Troy Athens High School, and Tim Storch was my soccer coach, one of the greatest high school soccer coaches in Michigan for sure, in the country probably. A phenomenal historical coach who's had tremendous success, over 1,000 wins in both men's and boys and girls soccer. He's a phenomenal coach. Won numerous state championships. He went to every one of our team dinners. Every one of them. We had a team dinner for every game. It wasn't like 4. It was for every game. JV, every game. Every game we had every game. And when we had long playoff runs, we were not only having we were having team dinners, but we were having team video parties at people's houses. I mean, it was an unbelievable experience. Unbelievable. So when I started my career at Groves, I wanted to have team dinners, and I started going to those, and the complaint was that the coach is trying to take away the team dinners from the players. I'm like, wait, I just want to be a part of the team because they're my team. I'm not looking to take anything away from them. But that was just one example of the many that I had to deal with. But the reason why I wanted to talk about this tonight and continue this conversation about parents is I want to know why. I want to know why. I want to know why we are so involved. Or are we even having conversations with our kids? Are we even having the conversation? Do you even understand like what's happening? And granted, not all coaches are like me. Not all coaches, were like, because, part of our process, that's why for me, it was like weird when a parent would be like, I don't understand this. Well, have you talked to your child? Because we told them their roles. We tell on the day of selection at my school, on selection Friday, whatever day it was that we did. It used to be, selection Wednesday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Monday tryout, Tuesday tryout, Wednesday tryout, and then we'd have our selection. And then we'd have Thursday and Friday, and then we'd have Thursday and Friday to do trainings, and usually we had a tournament on Saturday. So to kind of give you an idea.
Pretty standard too.
It was 2-a-days. You had a morning session and an afternoon. Mornings was always built around technical. We called them circuit training. So we'd have like 5 or 6 different zones where players would run to, and we'd have coaches in those zones, and they would catch them shooting, dribbling, passing. Every aspect of the game, we could try to find a way to get them in those moments so we could see them. And we knew that players weren't always going to excel in those moments. So what do you do in the afternoon? You scrimmage. There are some players that are straight-up ballers that they don't train well, and there are other players that train phenomenally and still play well, right? There's a combination of both. So we set them up for both, and we did that for 3 straight days. After night 1, if a player was a freshman and they were awful, and when I say awful, I don't mean that to be derogatory, negative, but if they were not a good soccer player and we didn't see them, why would I keep them? So we made cuts on day 1. If there was a player that was so far away from the pool that we needed to be at, we would send him packing. And we would say, hey, if you don't, I understand it, And some kids would be like, well, coach, can I come back tomorrow? I go, well, you can come back tomorrow. I said, but, there's, one of those things is, and Dan, you've been around soccer for a long time. I've been around soccer. We can pick, we can see talent. We can see not just talent, but we can see raw ability that can be cultivated or molded into a soccer player that you need for your team. We could do that. So we did that. And then after every training session in the morning and the afternoon, what would we do? We'd go back as coaches and we would talk about players. We started to put a board together on Monday. We knew who our varsity returning players were already. You had your fringe, varsity, fringe JVA for the varsity, right? Then you had your fringe JVB, JVA. And that's the player you spend all your time on fringe players. All of your time. I'm giving you the insight, by the way, right now into a selection process for high school. So if you're paying attention, this is great. I'm giving you great insight. I'm not saying all coaches do this, but that's what we did. We spent a lot of time, okay, and looking about, okay, who's this player? Who's this player? Okay, hey, if there's a goalkeeping scenario where we don't have a player who can play goalie or isn't trying out as a goalie, we would then go to players who we think that maybe they weren't quite good enough to be on any team, but they could be a goalkeeper. Maybe we'd go to them and say, hey, here's your chance. We're going to give you the gloves. Do you think you can do it? And there were a number of players that we did that with that put them in a position to make a team. So we spent hours. So on the final day of tryouts, morning session was usually some scrimmaging, light scrimmaging, and then at lunchtime we'd bring them in, and we would do one by one. I'd bring each player in one by one, sitting down.
Like an office at the school?
It was we had a classroom, and they all came in. It was me and the coaches sitting at one side. The player would come in, and we'd bring these coaches, these players in one by one. We tell them if they made it, which at this point, typically these kids all made it at this point. It wasn't like, we didn't, I'm not saying we didn't cut kids, but typically the cuts had all taken place throughout the course of the 3 days. And we would then tell them their roles. Here's where we think you're going to be. As of right now, based on where you trained, where you tried out, and this is where you are in our depth chart. We would say you're number 12. I see you being a solid role player coming off the bench. You're in our starting 11 as of right now. That could change. Don't be lax. And hey, if you're number 17, we'd say you're number 17 on the roster. How do you get to number 12? This is what you got to do. And there were some players that were like, hey, you're in the top 25. Congratulations. You will never see the field. You will never see the field. The clouds would have to come crashing down from the sky, and 12 players ahead of you would had to have literally been, whatever, and then you would then still not probably have a chance to be on the field. Because there were certain players that were like that.
But they were probably good kids. They just wanted to be part of the team.
Yeah, and they were for my last couple of years, players came to me and said, hey, Coach, we know this particular player is probably not going to make varsity, but we want them on the team. Can you please? And I would say, well, it's your player. You're coaching them. I mean, when I say you're coaching them, like, I don't want to have to deal with the BS of a player who's never going to play. And these are players that never were going to play, Dan. They were never going to play. And it wasn't because I didn't think they were good people or I didn't want to give them an opportunity. It wasn't about that. It's just that my job at a varsity level was to win games. And did I do a great number of winning? I mean, our goal was to win. I think I came out with a winning record. I think it was 55, 30, and 10 in my career there. So whatever that number was, I don't know what it was. I'd have to go back and look. But anyways, my goal was to win games. And, just like what we see with Team USA, you see a player going out there, why are we making a right back switch in the World Cup? If I think about positions that I want to change in a game, I don't know if I want to make a center back change in the World Cup. I mean? I don't want to make a right back change. Like, if I'm making a change, it might be left wing. I'll take out my top left wing and I'll put in my third string left wing because, you can't do any damage at left wing. You can, but you're 90 yards from your goal. So, hopefully you have like a bunch of other players, but you start putting somebody at left back who's not a left back and they struggle against a good team, you're giving up goals. So we had these players, and the parents did not have these conversations with their kids, or the kid didn't have the conversation with their parents. Because at the end of the season, they're like, what the heck? Why did my son never played? Did you not talk to your son? I mean, I think it's safe to say that parents want their kids to be successful, not just on a soccer field, but in the classroom and in life. So why would we be waiting to the last game of the season to be pissed off that your child didn't play? Why are we waiting that long? Or will we be expecting all of it to come together in one game? I mean, why are we so obsessed with being a starter than we are with getting quality minutes?
And some of it is you might have a son that's junior and he's the 18th man on a 23-man roster, but you got 14 seniors. So the idea is the kid will probably get his moment the following year.
I played in one game as a junior. I sat the bench. I might have played in a couple of scrimmages at Athens. I rode the bench the entire time. I went to every practice, every training session. I gave it everything I had. And there was a moment where there were some kids that got into some trouble. And just like I said, like Tim Storch said to me, he goes, John, you're going to have two goalkeepers get murdered in order to get in the game.
You were behind a couple of really good goalies, too.
I was behind a couple of really good goalkeepers. And what happened is both those goalkeepers got in trouble during a homecoming thing, and they got in trouble for, I don't know, whatever it was. And like 11 players from our team were suspended for a game against Rochester. And sure enough, I was not even at. This happened the night before the game, so I'm I went home. I did not go to this thing that everybody else did. Thank God I didn't, because if I did, I would have been suspended as well. So like 11 kids are suspended. I get a call from Tim Storch that night. He goes, John, just so you know, tomorrow you're starting. I'm going, what are you? In an OAA, whatever top at that time, I don't remember what the OAA rated was.
It was OAA Division
whatever
1
it was.
Then, yeah.
I'm finding out I'm playing against our a rival, Rochester, in a division game the next night. And I had the only game I'd ever played in as a varsity player. And I want to say we were at Berkeley. We were winning like 5-0, and Storch said, "Go on in, John." And I went out there for 2 minutes. That was the only time I had. So I had zero and I had played, JV is very different than playing on varsity. Okay. So we can argue about that all day long, but it's very different. So you get sent out there to do that. And half our team, by the way, is now made up of mainly the JV team, because we lost our entire starting lineup.
It's funny. I remember this happening. This is what, 97,
It was 98. It was 98. The year after we'd won it, right? So it was my junior year, 98, so it's a rainy night. We lose 2-1. Or if it was, it's 2-1 because it was a rainy night. I remember I had, maybe it was 1-0. No, it was 2-1 because my friend Jason scored a goal in that game. His claim to fame. He didn't play in varsity his senior year because he slacked off, but he did score a goal on varsity his JV year as a JV captain in that Rochester game. But it all happened, but that happened to me. That's how I got in the moment. And my parents, they're like, hey, they were very supportive of me. I got to give my parents credit for that, because they were extremely supportive of the fact that, because Tim Storch, as a junior, he said, John, if you want to start on JV this year, you can have it. And we'll bring you for the playoffs like we did the year before that. You can get as many minutes as you want. I felt that was not the best thing for me. I felt like that would put me back. I wanted to train. I wanted to be with the varsity team. There's something to be said about being part of the varsity team, even if you're not playing many minutes. I wanted that. If you're just joining us, we're talking about parents. And I know I've talked a lot about my coaching career, but a lot of it has to do with parents. And specifically, what is taking place between parents and athletes? Because, and I understand this as a child, as a teenager, I wanted nothing to do. I remember very vividly every tryout, I'd come home, and it was like the National Inquisition that was taking place at my house. My mom, my freshman year, it was so bad that by the time I got to a sophomore, I'd given her note cards of the questions she could ask me, because it was that bad. It was that bad. So are parents not having these conversations with their kids because it would be, or they're not believing their kids? Because
I don't know. In a way, I think, Jonathan, that it's almost a sense of entitlement, because if I'm a parent and I'm paying for my kids to grow up playing, club sport and whatever sport my kid plays in. And the same thing happened. Like, my sister grew up in the dance community. She did tap, jazz, and ballet. Same concept, where people are constantly telling you, how good you are, because the parents just keep writing that check, write that check. But then you get in the upper grades of high school, and you're either on a club team or you're playing for your high school, varsity or JVA, is like a junior or senior. The process of elimination starts, where the field's getting narrower in terms of developing as an athlete. And some kids get cut. Some kids decide not to come back as seniors because they know they're not going to make the roster. And some kids have to deal with the fact that we have 15 seniors on a 24-man roster, and I'm in that bottom 5 or 6. And the only time I'm going to get over the course of two months is garbage time. In a 5-0 blowout, I might get to play the last 8 minutes and then go 3 weeks with not playing another minute again before I get another chance. And some kids are fine with that, but it just seems like the stories I've been told over the last 3 decades is the parents often are the ones that can't deal with that. They can't deal with the fact that their kid isn't as good as an athlete in whatever sport it is they're playing as they've been told because they've been writing a check to Club Team X for so many years. And it's
I don't know if I put entitlement in there because I feel like entitlement. I do think that there's a lot of players and young adults that are entitled. I don't know if I'd put because when I think of entitlement, if a parent's paying for something, I understand they might want something in return, right? I get that. I mean, I think that's natural capitalism at its finest, in society. You put $200 into a booster club, you expect to get $200 of something out of it, right? Gear, dinners, whatever. It's pay to play now. When I was a kid, I think soccer you just signed up and you were playing soccer in public schools. Now you got to pay for it. Now you got to pay $200, $250 a kid, $300. You get a discount if you have multiple kids playing sports. It's different now. I get that. But the reality is this: is that, I think that there's something to be said about allowing if your child is not having the conversation with the coach. And my rule was to parents, as part of our rules, it was, hey, if you feel like your son's not getting a fair shake, after a game, it's 24 hours. Just give me 24 hours. Let's talk. Let's
24-hour rule.
24-hour rule.
Most coaches have that in effect.
You just don't, you want to, and I said, hey, if you're going to call me about playing time, I'm not going to have the conversation with you. That was the rule. I said, do not talk to me about playing time. Talk to your son. Your son knows why he's not playing or why he isn't. Part of our process was we kept track of attendance. We kept track of everything that was relevant to us making decisions that would be based on tangible things that we could keep track of. Attendance was one of those. If you didn't go to school, injuries, right? I mean, kids for the most part lack a lot of responsibility. They don't take accountability for their health in a lot of cases. And when it came to injuries and things like that, they didn't always, take care of themselves, so to speak. So we would oftentimes have to deal with that. So, to get an email the night after you winning a league title and people complaining about how your kid didn't play, those things kind of drove me nuts because you didn't have a chance to really. I mean, my first ever league title, I think I talked about this, and I don't know if I talked about this on the show or not. But my first ever league title was back in 2017. I think it was 2016. Sorry, 2016. We won the league title.
Is that the way white division?
We won the blue. So we won the blue. They've been the blue for a number of years. The year before that, we finished in second place. We just couldn't find a way to in the last game of the season to do it. And sure enough, on the second year I was there, we found a way. The last game of the season, we're tied. It's senior night. It's playing Farmington. I'm playing a good Farmington team. Another team that was named the Falcons. We're down 3-0 at halftime. We come back and we tie the game 3-3. We needed a point to take the league. We took it. And before I'm walking off the field, my family's there, my wife's there, my parents. We're walking off the field, and before I can even get out of the damn field, I have a parent yelling at me about how their kid could have been playing on JV that night to get more minutes, but they were on the bench watching us win the league title. And it sucked. It sucked because I didn't have a chance to. We just won a league title, the first league title they had in a couple of years, and now we're moving up to the white. Next year, we play in the white in 2017. We finished in second place. And then the following year, we won it again. We won the white. So we've gone from the blue to the white, and then we went to the red. And granted, we lost our butts the year I left to in the red, but I wanted our guys. They worked hard to get there. Why not give them a chance to be in that top league and see what could happen? But you didn't get a chance to enjoy it. And that's the part that I can't get back.
And it was because parents just couldn't find a way to be able to control their emotions. And as we continue to have conversations like this on this network, part of the goal of this network is to be able to hopefully shine the light on these things and say, hey, what are we doing here? Like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing here? I mean, to be fair, your son's game wasn't, and I'm going to bring it all back now, your son's game would never have been on the air if it weren't for MSN creating itself here 6 months ago. So maybe instead of walking into a press box you have no business being in, what is a better way to do it? And we had it happen multiple times this year. Parents walking into the press box. We had at certain schools, and it's a shame to say this, but certain schools, their student sections were terrible. And parents were yelling at us. We're in the press box. And, of course, the first thing people see when they see someone in a press box, they think that immediately they're associated with that school. They start screaming at us on the air. And we're like, hey, we're on the air. And it doesn't stop them. It doesn't stop. These kids need to be corrected. Okay, but we're not with the school. We all could do a better job. We all need to be better. Don't come to my press box anymore. Leave our press box alone.
10, 12 years ago, this was actually at a volleyball match, high school volleyball match, but similar concept with dealing with parents. So it was at a district volleyball doubleheader, like semis, at Waterford Kettering, and the second game was over, and I walk up to the winning coach. There was 2 other reporters there, so it's 3 of us, and we all started asking questions. We had our video cameras, recording the interview, and this parent marches right up and stands right in front of everyone holding their cameras. Of course, we have to stop, and he starts saying about, hey, great coach win, but I really need to talk to you about something. And I kind of lost it. I looked right at the guy, goes, excuse me, sir, we're working here. We're conducting interviews. He goes, oh, I'm working too. I said, absolutely, you're not. We're working here. You need to wait till we're done, and then you can talk to the coach. I was furious because I knew that my 2 colleagues were quite upset as well. And this guy just goes off. And then I finally said, listen, sir, how about tomorrow morning at 9, 10 o'clock in the morning when you're in your boardroom at the corporation you work for, how about I just walk and barge right in, right in the middle of your presentation in front of 20 people sitting around in a giant boardroom? How far do you think I would get until I'm arrested or escorted out by security? What gives you the right to come into our workspace, interrupt us during an interview? And this stuff happens all the time. It doesn't matter what sport it is. It happens several times a school year. Just the complete and total rudeness of parents.
Yeah.
And I just kind of semi-lost it that night because I felt like something needed to be said. Again, this was at a volleyball game. It was a district semis, same concept. It's just, I've had it happen in every sport.
Yeah.
Parents, they have no boundaries. They have no patience. They just have something on their mind and they're going to walk up and do it. And they don't care who they insult, who they interrupt. They don't care about their...
Well, it's because they have blinders on, and
exactly.
it's the parent blinders, right? And again, I'm a parent, so I believe you me, I could lose it. You just saw my house this morning. My son woke up and one of his polo shirts had an ink stain on it. It was as if the world came to an end. He wanted to stay home from school. So I get it. I think we all get that. My whole point with this is that just like everything, there's a right way and a wrong way to do things. We all know and understand that, in that moment, it's like, hey, when people want to be heard, they do whatever they can so they can be heard. And a lot of times it ends up being, yelling. The same message can be done in a calm conversation a day later where, cooler and calmer heads prevail. But
sometimes you're going to give them an answer they don't want to hear.
No, of course not. And that's the problem. My first year, Dan, and as we get ready to wrap this thing up, my first year at Groves, we had some kids who were not playing. They were just not good enough to be on the field. They were not good enough. They were, and to be fair, had it been my second year, they wouldn't have been there in the first place. But it was my first year, so instead of cutting kids who I shouldn't cut, I kept them. And I told these kids, that hey, there were 3 of them that were just not ready to be on the field. They were not varsity ready, and I said, hey, you're not good enough.
And a parent walked up to me, one of the parents, and the kid says, "You told my kid he's not good enough?" I said, "Yes, I did." And you can't tell kids that. I said, "Why not? Why can't you tell a kid he's not good enough? He's not good enough. What do you want me to tell him? He's good enough? What do you want me to tell you? Well, what would be the better way to say it? Well, with more training, he can get there. Well, see, that's not how that works. You know, I'm not saying, and moms and dads out there, this might be a controversial thing to say, so you might have to maybe turn this off if you're watching, but it doesn't work that way. You know, training is a way for players to develop. There's no question about that. But at the varsity level as a senior in high school, if you think training is going to get them there, you're not thinking properly. It ain't going to click their senior year. If it ain't clicking by their junior year, it ain't going to click in their senior year. It isn't going to happen. You know, it isn't going to happen. I'm sorry. If your child is not on an ECNL team at the time that they're 17 years old, it's not going to happen at 18. Yeah, and if it did, guess what they would be? They'd be like number 27 on a roster of 27. You know, I mean, that's what it would be. Get your head out of the clouds.
It's reality.
I mean, I'm sorry, but I mean, if your child is not there, again, there are pathways now in the world where you could look, again, me and Dan and probably a handful of other people around this country and around this area could look at a kid and say, okay, that's a really good player. How do they perform in a game? Well, we'll find out. And if they perform, guess what happens? They move to another level, or they stay at the level that they're currently at. You know, but just because your son or daughter is playing travel soccer does not make them an instantaneous success. And just because they start on their P4, you know, MYSL green team, whatever, in the 09 division of the Michigan whatever club does not mean that they're going to be a starter on the varsity team as a freshman. Yeah, you know, I mean, that's the brutal truth here on Monday night. Maybe what we should call it brutal truth. I mean, there are so many aspects to a soccer player that will determine whether or not a soccer player is going to go to another level. Personal fitness is extremely important. You have to be extremely fit to play at a high level. So if your son or daughter is not running around a bunch of times and spending a lot of time training themselves, that's a telltale sign they're probably not going where you want them to go. The second part of this is the technical side of it. If they're not technically sound players, meaning that if they're with no pressure, they're able to pass the ball to touch, good decision making, good technical fundamentals. They can do that. That's great. You add pressure and they can't do it. Guess what? They're not going anywhere. They're not going anywhere. Because the second that they're pressured, if they can't find a way to pass at speed, make good decisions quickly and successfully, they're not playing at the next level. That is the determining factor right now across this country, is how fast a player can make a decision in short windows. Short windows.
In sports, you think about it. You're on a soccer field, ice rink, basketball court, whatever. You have to make split decisions.
Split decisions.
That can lead to a goal or a game-winning RBI in baseball. Whatever the case is, you have that split second. And a lot of kids can't do that. They don't. That's the way it is. They don't. Well, and that's
again,
where you have the process elimination work.
It comes down, and again, experience is key. I've had this conversation many times with fellow coaches about this because it was something that I could not figure out at my school. Why is it that Athens can do it, but I can't? Why is it that Troy High can do it, but I can't? Why? Well, I'm going to tell you. Here's the secret. Ready? Here it is. All their players, they play at a high level all the time. That's the secret. They're playing at a high level all the time. P4 isn't it, or MYSL, whatever, isn't it. MSPSP, P1, not it. ECNL, Directors Academy, MLS Next, all those leagues, Super Y, all these leagues, national leagues and everything, those leagues have the best players. The best players, what happens to the best players? They get quality touches at a high level. They're getting the coaching at a high level. And not the kind of coaching where you go to a training session and, everyone's just dribbling around cones. No, they go to a training session where, everything is just moving in unison. I've been to those. I've ran those training sessions. They're fantastic.
You know what clogs up the line at a high school training session is the weakest player. You know, and guess who I'm coaching to? You know, just like in the classroom, there's no child left behind. You know what teachers spend most of their time on? They spend most of their time on the kid who's not doing well. And that's not necessarily a negative thing, but it slows down the rest of the group. So sometimes they can't do that anymore because it slows down the rest of the group. And in high school, that's what happens. If you bring in players that you should not have on that team, you know what happens? Your team struggles. Light bulb, boom. That's how that works. Well, what is the difference? How did Rochester Adams win the state finals this year? It's a great question. They had some really good players, but they were not in. Again, we talk about the Division I state finals. Dan and I, we talked about this. I don't think anyone picked Rochester Adams to win it.
No, there's 5 or 6 schools that everyone talked about through the regular season. We got into the districts, and Adams was favored to win their district. I didn't think they'd get out of a regional.
No.
Personally, and they've got some very good players.
Very good players.
They have some players that will probably play in college at various levels. But
we talked about it.
I just looked across the state, and based on the results that were happening and the rankings and everything else, and I didn't think so. But you know what? They pulled a big upset of Troy in that regional semifinal. They got hot. They went on. They gained a lot of confidence. And that's a big thing in sports is confidence.
It is. And confidence comes with a lot of different things. But I'll go back to it. I'll say it right now. Mom and dad, you know, again, there are lots of things that you can do as parents, encouragement, things like that. But I think it's important to understand the realities of a situation. If your child is not playing at a high level of competition as they enter the high school realm, it's too late. And I'm not saying that there aren't nuances or exceptions to the rule, because there are exceptions to the rule.
You know, kids actually grow physically.
Yeah,
like boys that might be a 14-year-old freshman,
but
may not be varsity or JV material because physically they're just physically not ready to play at that level, but they grow into their body.
Yeah.
You see that more with boys. With girls, sometimes when they're at 9th grade, you can start to see that this kid's going to be a varsity or JVA player right off the bat.
And I'm not. Size has a lot. Size has to do with domination on a field, right? I have a lot of kids that I've coached and I've been a part of my entire lifetime that were the smallest players on the field. They played like they were the biggest. So all of those things they do, and as kids grow and they mature, of course, they get taller and things like that happen. So, but when it comes to the controllables, if your child is not playing at a high level as they go into the high school as a freshman or a sophomore, it's too late. In most cases, it's too late. So do everything you can as a parent, mom, and dad to help facilitate the process so that your child can be in a position to try out and be at a place where they can play at a high level, because that's the only way. That's the way the soccer world is. And stay out of my press box. I keep saying it. Stay out of our press box.
That is a working space, yes.
Stay out of the press box. We will do everything we can to get your child's name right. We'll do everything we can to do and honor whatever name.
You see people, waltz right in a high school football game. Well, my 13-year-old turned 13 today. Please read this. And these people are trying to spot and announce the play-by-play. I don't have time for this stuff.
I know.
But they just waltz right in like they feel like they have the right just to walk in.
It's true. No, we don't have the right to do anything. Dan, I know this is something you want to get off your chest here tonight. Something we were going to talk about. Do you still want to do it?
Yeah, we'll talk just a couple minutes.
So Dan mentioned it, alluded to it a little bit here last week. He's talked about it a couple of times throughout the fall season. And again, we do appreciate you joining us here tonight, MSN Weekly. You're watching us live here on YouTube. If you haven't hit the subscribe button, please do so. It is 9:24. Dan, you've got 3 minutes, and the mic is yours.
So this is a little history lesson. So people that followed high school sports remember the lawsuit that first was formed back in 2001. And it was formed by a group of angry volleyball parents in the west side of the state, kind of the Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo area. So as the ball got rolling, they essentially sued the Michigan High School Athletic Association because they felt that they wanted girls volleyball in the fall and then club in the winter and in the spring, and then girls basketball should be moved from the fall to the winter, and what's more, go in line with the rest of the country. So this stayed litigated. It was in the courts for a few years there, and then when the dust finally settled in like about 2007, Girls volleyball was moved from the winter to the fall season for high school, and girls basketball was moved from the fall to the winter. But part of the lawsuit was they felt like the court system felt like they should move other sports out of season because Michigan had certain sports out of season. So boys golf and girls tennis got moved to the spring, and then girls golf and boys tennis got moved from the spring to the fall. So they flip-flopped those two sports. But in the midst of all this, the courts felt like they ended up moving boys soccer in the Upper Peninsula to the spring and girls soccer to the fall. The problem is the Lower Peninsula and then Wisconsin and Minnesota and even Ontario, Canada had boys soccer in the fall and girls soccer in the spring. So where were these 15 to 20 schools in UP that have soccer? Who were they supposed to play against? So the only way they could keep their seasons in sync with the rest of Michigan and neighboring states is they kept boys soccer in the fall and girls soccer in the spring. But by doing that, they were going against the court order, so they weren't allowed, and they have not been allowed to play in the Michigan High School Athletic Association state tournaments, divisions 1 through 4. So for the last 16 years, those teams have played league and non-league schedules, depending on what school it is. Some of those schools come down to the Lower Peninsula, play in weekend tournaments and play non-league games, but they have a couple of minor, kind of small Upper Peninsula tournaments where if you're in the UP, you can enter the Division I or Division II state tournament based on the enrollment strength of your program. And I think there was about 10 or 12 of those schools that did so this fall. Marquette won their 15th or 16th straight Division I UP title, and Escanaba Gladstone Bayside United. This is a club-funded team out of communities in the Escanaba area, won Division II. But they cannot still, to this day, compete in the state tournament based on a lawsuit that took place that somehow dragged them into it nearly 20 years ago. So I know there's petitions going around with parents and coaches in the high school and clubs in the Upper Peninsula trying to get this reversed in terms of soccer so they can at least compete in the district tournament. Now, realistically speaking, are there any teams in the Upper Peninsula right now that are going to turn around if they're allowed to compete in the state tournament with the rest, Lower Peninsula? Would they win a state title? No, but there are some teams up there that do pretty well that could contend for, district championships and maybe make a little bit of a run. But they're not allowed to, obviously, they're not in the state tournament, so they don't get any all-state honors. There's a lot of people downstate that don't even know the schools in the Upper Peninsula even have teams.
Yeah, I don't even know.
I mean, it's 15 to 20, give or take, every school year. A couple of schools add soccer, a couple might drop because of low numbers, whatever the case is. But it's really not fair. And I had a conversation with several UP coaches the last couple of years on the phone. They've addressed the fact that there are petitions going around with parents. They've been quoted in all the newspapers in UP. They're sick and tired of this. So is this going to happen? Is this going to be dragged back in the courts? Are they eventually going to be allowed to? Is the MHSA going to even entertain this? Or are they allowed to entertain this based on this court order from nearly 20 years ago that somehow threw boys and girls soccer and UP into this mixing bowl, this mess? I mean, because the parents who started this were volleyball parents, again, on the west side of the Lower Peninsula. Those kids are now in their 30s, mid to late 30s. They're so far removed from high school sports that I'm sure the parents who started this ridiculous lawsuit to begin with aren't even thinking about this anymore. So will we see a change here in the next couple of years? I would love to see those schools at least have a chance to compete. I mean, there's 8 or 9 Division IV schools in the UP that have teams, so technically that would probably be a district in itself, so someone up there would win a district every year. Because prior to 2007, there was a small school winning a district, and then Division I or II, Marquette won 3 or 4 districts back in the 90s, early 2000s before this lawsuit took effect. So, yeah, well, I'm going to do some more research on this and see if this petition is really starting to come to fruition if the state of Michigan is actually going to take a look at this, or if they're just going to keep sweeping this underneath the rug. So it affects a small portion of the Michigan soccer community, but I thought it'd be worth something discussing, and we can discuss it further down the line in one of our upcoming shows. Maybe we can get a coach from the UP to, hop on Zoom and talk to us on air about the current situation.
I couldn't agree with you more, Dan. And things need to change, right? Things need to change in a lot of different ways, and we'll continue to talk about this here on the network, and hopefully we'll see some change here in the coming months and years. We want to say thank you for watching us here on MSN Weekly here on this Monday night, the 28th of November. I wish you everyone had hopefully a safe and happy Thanksgiving. You left that one all nice and fulfilled with food in your belly and sleep in your bed. Or on the couch, wherever you might have watched. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern, United States, Iran. Chance to go on to the knockout rounds. The winner will advance. That's tomorrow. Next Monday night, right here on the Michigan Soccer Network, we will announce the super team here, the MSN Super Team. 25 players and 2 coaches from around the state of Michigan, from all divisions, right here at 8 p.m. Eastern as part of our MSN Weekly lineup. Might have Steve, might have some other coaches. We'll let you know. And coming up here later this week, we're going to release our competition for as far as our contest and our raffle here for subscribership in December. A lot of opportunities. There's a lot of votes going on right now on Twitter in regards to that. But we want to say thank you for joining us here on this Monday evening. Again, the last Monday of November as we head into December here later this week. Exciting times. Quarterfinals start Wednesday right here on the MichiganSoccerNetwork.com in regards to our goal of the year. Our save of the year starts December the 12th. So a lot happening here and coming up here in a very short time. So from all of us here at the Michigan Soccer Network, Dan Stickrat, Jonathan Turner, we're excited once again to send this one off. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time here for more soccer.
I watch soccer on the Michigan Soccer Network.
I watch soccer on Michigan Soccer Network.
لا تنسون تتابعونا على Michigan Soccer Network.
I watch soccer on Michigan Soccer Network.
I like to watch soccer on Michigan Soccer Network.
I watch soccer on Michigan Soccer Network.
Me gusta mirar fútbol en Michigan Soccer Network.
I watch soccer on Michigan Soccer Network.
I love watching soccer on the Michigan Soccer Network.
Back to Vitriol. He'll take a shot, and he'll bear it! And then he'll fire it from Billows, and it'll go in! Now Worrell has a good cutback from him. He'll fire one, and that's going to go in! Oh, and both goals so far. He'll fire one, and that's a wonderful save, opportunity. That's missed. Oh, it's Stone! And he'll fire one now from distance, and that is in! What a strike by Ben Maher!